this is my first love. I really miss doing Hypergrid Business, and I've started doing the monthly stats again. And I found a couple of more freelance writers to contribute articles. And if any of you out there want to contribute regular columns, news pieces, press releases, anything like that to OpenSim, absolutely feel free to send them along. And I do not mind if you use AI to help write them, because we're a tech-forward publication. As long as the piece is accurate and reflects reality and your views, I'm okay if AI has been used to help out. So hopefully that'll make it a little bit easier for people to keep everyone updated as to what they're doing. All right, so I ran some statistics in the last couple of months, and because I knew it was going to be this conference, I ran a survey as well, and here I am to talk about things. So my email address is on this screen. I'm perfectly happy if people email me and send me press releases and ask questions and all the other things. And so let's talk about the numbers. We had 374 active grids showing up at one point or another over the course of this year. I missed half the year for statistics. So this number is down quite a bit from 2 years ago when it was over 500. But that's just because I missed a lot of grids that popped up and disappeared again, or popped up and are still around, but I haven't picked up on it yet. If you know of a grid that I'm not tracking, email me and I'll add it to my database. So we had a peak of 47,518 active users on the OpenSim grids this year. Now, the last time I presented, it was in 2023, and the number was in the 46,000 something. No, sorry, 47,169. So we're up a few hundred over 2023, even though some grids have closed and some grids had outages and other things happened. So we're doing pretty well. And the numbers declined a little bit in the last couple months, but they always do because OpenSim traffic is seasonal. So in terms of active users, we're doing pretty well. Active users includes hypergrid visitors. So if somebody went from grid A to grid B to grid C, they will show up as an active user on all 3 grids, so they will be counted 3 times. This is similar to if somebody creates a user account on grid A, grid B, and grid C. They are also counted 3 times then. Or if they have multiple accounts on the same grid, they'll be counted multiple times. That's just the way the numbers work. And so it's not like a one-to-one correspondence, but also some grids don't report hypergrid traffic as part of their numbers, and some grids don't report any traffic at all. So I figure those things kind of cancel each other out. So the hypergrid, as always, dominated usage. The hypergrid makes it really easy for people to travel from grid to grid. I can see from people's avatar names that a lot of people in the audience today teleported here. And this is my idea of the metaverse, is the fact that we're connected and can teleport from one place to another, which is really cool. It still makes OpenSim unique in the universe today. And I still love that about OpenSim. And it's the only real platform out there that does this, where anybody can set up a world and connect it to all the other worlds. And I think that is awesome. And nearly all the traffic has been on the hypergrid. And I do collect numbers from the private grids that do share those numbers. And you can see that's the red line on this bar chart. And it's been flat for the past 8 years. And the reason is because it is really difficult to create a brand new account on a new grid. First of all, there's the pain of setting up a new user account and confirming your email address and stuff like that. But then you have to outfit the avatar because you want the avatar to look like you. You might have to buy all your stuff all over again, or you might have to redo your shape and import items. And it's a huge, huge pain in the butt. And if the grid is new and you don't know if it's going to last or not, you don't want to go through all that effort. But you also don't want to look like a default avatar when you show up at a new grid because you can't recognize yourself. And, who wants that? So pretty much stopped visiting closed grids quite a while ago because I did not feel like creating new avatars over and over and over again. And if something is not hypergrid enabled, I'm probably not going to go in there to see what's happening or to take pictures because I just don't have the time and I don't want to look like a default avatar. And when I go to events, when I go to visit beautiful places and take pictures or check out welcome areas on new grids, I really want to be able to hypergrid in. And for land area, it is even more dramatic. And the reason is because you have a lot of competition for land on a hypergrid enabled grids. You can have an avatar on one grid and land on another grid and do your shopping on a third grid. And you can go to the grids that have nice land prices to buy your land there. And also, some of the hypergrid enabled grids are open grids, meaning that if you have a spare computer sitting around or a spare server, you can run the region on your own computer. And anytime your computer is online and connected to OpenSim, so is your region. So OS Grid's the biggest example of this, and they even have an easy installer you can download and install on your desktop, and you've got yourself a region on OS Grid. There's third-party hosting providers that will give you very low-cost regions and connect them to any open grid. And it's a really easy way to be part of the metaverse at an extremely low cost. And that tends to be an option much more often on the open grids that are hypergrid accessible rather than on closed proprietary grids, which tend to be more commercially oriented. Sometimes they run proprietary versions of OpenSim that don't support new kinds of region types. For example, variable size regions are a very cool, low impact way to get a lot of land. Speaking of land, the way I track these statistics is in terms of standard region equivalence, which is controversial. Like pretty much every single month, somebody complains about it. And so I'm going to tell you why I do this in case you missed that controversy. So let's say you have a grid that's 10 by 10 regions, so 100 regions total. And somebody teleports into that grid and they want to look around, they want to walk around, they want to visit some events. So they see this grid as 100 regions in size, 10 by 10. Now, depending on how the grid is set up, internally on the back end and on the map, it might show up as one big region with a single name, or 10 individual regions, each with its own name, but connected as part of the mega region system, or different combinations, 2 by 2 here, 3 by 3 here, 4 by 4 here, and all sorts of other ways that they can add up to 100 regions based on how you group the regions together on the back end inside your database. But none of this is really relevant to the user who visits the grid, who wants to know, well, how big is this grid? And so I track all my land numbers in terms of the equivalent of a standard region, which is a 65,536 square meter size region, or about 16 acres, which is the same size as a Second Life region or the original regions in OpenSim. And so I convert all the square kilometer numbers and the square meter numbers into the standard region equivalents with a formula that my database runs automatically. And Sometimes there's mistakes in that because people in Europe put their commas and the periods in the wrong places, and other weird formatting things happen. So, and then people complain, and I fix it, and I have to do them manually. And with hundreds of grids every month, this is a huge project. And no, there is not an easy way to automate this. I've automated this about as far as it can get, but so many regions have unique ways of showing their stats that are not compatible with any other region, with any other grid. And there's a lot of manual work in there, which is kind of why I gave up on doing them. But then my OCD kicked back in, and now I have to do this every month again. All
Maybe
right.
AI can
So
help out with it over time too in the future.
nobody can help. Nobody can help because nobody else cares about this. Like, seriously, people think it's an easy technical fix, but it is not, because this is hard-coded HTML, often like using weird stuff like Flash or weirdly arranged tables or weird divs and stuff. I have to pull out the HTML. I have to parse everything out. Oh, and it's also in multiple languages, multiple formats, multiple punctuations, and people, every region decides to call, every grid calls its region something else. Like somebody calls it islands, somebody else calls it plots, somebody else calls it your lands, whatever, right? So you have to pull all this out in all the different languages. And then once you have this figured out, they change, they switch languages, they switch punctuation, they rearrange everything, they make it into some kind of weird animation. Yeah. And this is like hundreds of grids. Hundreds of grids. Yep. So please, people, stop using periods and commas in your numbers. I beg you. Right. So I went through some of the top stories that we had in 2005. We had a couple of big events this year. We had the Hypergrid International Expo, which was on Craft World. Now, this was really cool. It was 2 days of art-focused events and performances, and they conducted it in German and in French and in Italian and Portuguese, and that was really cool. They have this pretty much every year for the last couple of years, so keep an eye out for it next year. I think it's going to be really, really cool again. All right. Then, um, in other big events, we had the OS Fest 2025. So that was in October. And this is more focused on the kind of community performance side of things, as opposed to the education and development side. That is the OpenSim Community Conference. And so it's like a fun thing to go to. And that was on the OS Fest grid this year. And I'm so happy to see that OpenSim is a busy and fun place that's happening. OS Grid, which is the biggest grid in OpenSim by land area and the oldest grid, and I mentioned they're like a big nonprofit. They had some maintenance in the spring, but they recovered and came back. And this fall, they had a fundraiser. They were aiming for $2,000, and they exceeded that. So their servers are paid for by donations, and they've got them covered. They're also looking for monthly support, and they're still looking for that. So if you can, go to osgrid.org. Not only are you helping to support the crossroads of the metaverse, but this is also the place where a lot of OpenSim development stuff is tested, because it's such a big grid, so you can test a lot of stuff on it. And if you're going to be donating to something in OpenSim, this is a great place to do it. Another thing that happened was on Kitely. Kitely's been known traditionally as more of like an infrastructure place. So if you're an educator, you can run a private grid using Kitely. They've got the Kitely Market, which is the biggest marketplace in OpenSim. And they've been kind of lagging behind on the events and the community side. And this year they started changing that around and they've opened an event and an expo center. So check that out. If you haven't been involved in the Kitely community yet, but just show up to visit the Kitely market, which delivers, by the way, to hundreds of grids directly into your avatar inventories wherever you are, including closed and private grids. So
And
fantastic system.
do they
Yeah.
still have the options on Kitely where it can be just a Kitely avatar for a different price to be able to take to the hypergrid?
If you're a content creator, you can set your content to be local only or exportable.
Okay.
And just with the other hypergrid stats, all the growth on the Kitely market has been on exportable content. And so I think that what content creators have figured out is that most of the stolen content comes from the closed grids, namely Second Life. That's where people steal stuff because that's where the stuff is. So keeping your things only on a closed grid and off the hypergrid doesn't really help protect your content from theft. But what it does do is it make it harder for people to spend money and buy your stuff. So it's kind of like the way Netflix and Hulu basically decimated the whole illegal video download business. Because why go to an illegal download site and possibly risk malware or a virus when for a couple of bucks you can watch all the movies you want legally and high definition and streaming, and you don't have to worry about like all this other stuff. Same thing for OpenSim. You can spend a buck or less and get like content in Kitely Market easily, quickly delivered straight to wherever you are without having to hunt around kind of the off-brand grids and their dark corners to see if you can find a freebie store that has some stolen stuff that you want in it. And if that store gets shut down, the content breaks in your avatar, and those stores can't advertise because they're illegal. So they're hard to find, they don't last long. Grids don't want to be shut down because if you have copyright infringement on your grid and you do not address it, and somebody files a DMCA takedown request on you, your hosting provider can just take down your whole platform. And it's really hard to fight against. And there's no benefit for grids in allowing illegal stores to continue to operate when there's so much legal free content in OpenSim. And one of the earliest creators that I loved was Linda Kelly. She helped kind of jumpstart this, and pretty much every grid opened a Linda Kelly freebie store on their welcome region. And now there's a lot more similar content that's free or proprietary to individual grids because they want to attract people. And it really isn't like this huge need anymore for free stuff that's illegal. Now, if you hunt around for it, you can still find it, and creators are still upset, and I do not blame them for being upset. But in terms of the global overall economy, I think having something like the Kitely market and having it accessible over the hypergrid is just a great thing. And it takes the wind out of the whole piracy movement
Yeah.
because you really don't need it. The prices are so ridiculously low for OpenSim content that it's just not worth the time and effort it would take to hunt down something legal only to have it disappear out of your inventory once the illegal shop is closed down. So, like, really, why bother?
Yeah, and
All right.
this
So,
outfit I'm wearing right now, that came off the Kitely marketplace, but it was actually and this one was gifted to me from the lady that made it. She was the
yeah.
same one that made that Great Wall of China sim in Second Life, if you remember that one. Um, one thing though, I think with Kitely, with their marketplace, it was kind of interesting as well, is I believe their marketplace is set up with no freebies because they didn't want to get into that whole mess of having it saturated with free stuff.
That's an opportunity for somebody else. So, and I've been really surprised that no one stepped up and done this because, yeah, Kindly Market, there's no reason for them to to offer freebies because it's a management nightmare because you have to keep track of the permissions of all these freebies. There's no money in it because people don't pay you for these things. And you have to store all these things and provide support to the creators who are uploading the stuff and who are buying the stuff. So it's just a big cost without much benefit for Kitely. So I can see their point on this. But this creates a window of opportunity for someone to set up a competing platform. The problem is that now you have to have all this overhead. You have to provide support to customers who get something for free and don't like the way it downloaded. You have to provide support for the creators who upload stuff for free and have problems with it. And you're not the revenues from any of these transactions, and you still have to pay for hosting costs. So I can see why we haven't seen a lot of traffic with free platforms, but yeah, um, it definitely is an opportunity for someone who's willing to make the long-term investment into doing this. Um, but it is a challenge, and like Lisa just pointed out, a lot of grids have freebie stores on their welcome regions, and the big popular grids do a pretty good job at keeping them clean and legal. So there's a lot of places to go pretty
Yeah.
easily to find freebies, and it attracts people to the grid. So if I was a grid owner, it makes sense for me to put my freebies in a welcome region so people teleport and visit the grid instead of putting it online into a website.
And Ada gives some there too about on Kitely for the starter
Yeah,
avatars. And I think it's kind of nice too that on some of these open sim events they have free stuff that it's your first time seeing it, like some of
yeah,
the collectible avatars and things like that. It kind of makes a way to make it more social to get the freebies.
exactly. Well, like what Kitely's doing, you log in, you create your avatar, and then they have a whole bunch of freebie stuff to get you started. So I used to publish a report about the best freebies in OpenSim, and but that hasn't been for a while, and I'm sure it's completely out of date. If somebody's interested in helping me out with this, maybe we can do it again. Or I can like email everybody and ask them for suggestions too. Okay, oh yeah, so OpenSim regions, a million regions this year, which was insane. And I had to go and figure out why. And the reason is because somebody was running a big simulation in OS Grid. And so when I ran my weekly numbers, I subtracted those simulated sims out because otherwise the graph would be like a flat line, then a giant spike up at the end. And it wouldn't really be, I mean, these are not like useful regions. This is like a simulation that somebody's running on a server and just attached it to OS Grid. So yeah, that was pretty cool. Um, now before, oh yeah, so before I go over there, I want to share some numbers from the user survey that I ran last year and forgot to add to these slides because of course I did. And so for every year since 2009, minus a few years where I skipped it, I've been asking people what they think about their grids. And I give people the choice of the 15 most popular grids by traffic to choose from, plus an option to write in their favorite grid, because there are like hundreds of grids out there. If I listed all of them in the survey, then people would give up on scrolling before they got to the end and not take the survey. So every year, one of the write-in grids does really, really well. And often the following year, they grow in traffic and become one of the top grids because it's kind of like an early sign that people love this new grid and are really passionate about it. So this year, two write-in grids got the highest overall scores from the residents. And these are not startup grids, they've been around for a while, but they're Littlefield and Utopia Sky. Now, since I've been off of OpenSim for a little bit, we didn't have the highest response rates for the survey compared to previous years. Hopefully next year we'll do better. So the margin of error is pretty high. So the reason I run this survey is more as a PR thing to let the world know that OpenSim is there, that there's a lot of fun grids there, that there's grids where people love living there. And maybe you might want to visit it and check it out and see what everybody's talking about. And in the survey, I do not pit grids against one another. I just ask people, how much do you love the grid you're on? And basically, right? So it is not really a competitive kind of survey, but it winds up being because that's what people like to read. And I think that the biggest problem OpenSim has is marketing. OpenSim is so much cheaper than Second Life, has so much more potential, so much more flexibility, so much more power for its users that I think if people knew about it, then OpenSim usage would be dramatically higher than it is now if people just knew that it was there. So anything that brings in attention, I think is a good thing. And it's the number one hardest thing for any small business person to do and for any grid owner to do is to get attention for their grid. And so horse races, they bring eyeballs. People care about which grid's ahead this year, which grid's ahead, last year, which grid's going to be ahead next year. This is not meaningful comparisons. I agree, but they're meaningful in the sense that they bring attention. And that lifts all boats, basically. So this year, all the grids had high scores, the very minor statistical differences between them. So I pulled them out. And like I said, Littlefield and Utopia Sky got overall high scores. Another grid with high scores was Wolf Territories, which is surprising to me because they're a big grid. Normally, the bigger the grid, the more hassles are on it. The more people get into fights with other people, the more they have trouble getting support for all of their pick-a-uni little issues, the more complaints accumulate. So it's harder for a really large grid to maintain really high user satisfaction ratings because people would be peopling and getting into fights with each other. So small grids with a lot of hands-on attention to their users from grid owners tend to score really well in these surveys. So I was really surprised by how well Wolf Territories did. Kitely had the most responses, followed by Littlefield, because the owners of those grids be really proactive at reaching out to their members and saying, hey, there's a survey, go take it. I also asked which grids were the most visited. And this is a really important statistic because it's a double check against all the numbers that I run every month. Because this is the question where people who are not primarily residents of a particular grid tell me about the other grids that they've been to. So if a grid is popular, it should be showing up on everybody's I visited this grid list. And if a grid has high monthly statistics, but nobody claims to be visiting it, then it's like, oh, why is this grid, saying they have all these high numbers, but I don't know anybody who's actually been there. So this is a great double check. Obviously, OS Grid came out on top because everybody's visited OS Grid. It is literally the crossroads of the metaverse. And Wolf Territories was up there as well. And Wolf Territories has been dominating all the traffic charts lately. And they just came out of nowhere a couple of years ago, and they've become the biggest grid by traffic, and I think the second or third biggest by land area. And they've been doing a great job. And yeah, they're the second most visited grid. So I'm reasonably sure that their numbers reflect reality because people who make their home on other grids say that they've visited Wolf Territories. And similarly, Alternate Metaverse and DigiWorlds and Kitely and Littlefield all had high numbers of people who said, yeah, I've been to that grid, which is a good sign for me. Then I asked if people would recommend their grid to other people. and 92% say that they would absolutely recommend their grid, and 3% said maybe, and only 1% said they would not recommend. And this is consistent with previous years, showing that OpenSim residents are happy. So more people should come here because we have a lot of happy people here who like their grids. I also asked people about specific details of technology, support, community, and content. And Utopia Sky and Littlefield scored high in technology, followed by OS Grid. And so with technology, you often get like support issues. And so I was surprised by how well OS Grid scored because they had an outage and because they have a lot of self-hosted regions. And the problem with self-hosted regions is if you turn off the computer, the region goes away. Or if you have a slow internet connection, the region is really, really laggy. And so people generally blame the grid for that, not the individual region owner, because like they don't think about, oh, this region is hosted on somebody's private computer, no, it's grid. They just think of it as no, it's grid region. And so I was really surprised to see how well OS Grid did, and Wolf Territories did very well as well. And for support, Littlefield and Utopia Sky got the high scores, followed by Kitely. Kitely often has really, really high support scores because the founders, Elon Tuchner and Oren Horowitz, do a fantastic job responding to everything. When I need a quote from somebody about something happening in OpenSim, Elon, sorry, Elon, if I'm mispronouncing your name again, he gets back to me right away. And grid owners complain that they don't get enough coverage in Hypergrid. And then when I email them, they never get back to me. They never send me press releases. They never send me announcements. Kitely sends me press releases. They send me announcements, and they respond to every single question I ask about anything. And that's why they're covered in OpenSim. And the reason they have a free ad on Hypergrid Business is because they just asked for one and sent me the images. I mean, that's it. That's all you have to do. And so they did that. Utopia Sky will be a closed grid starting January 1st. So I don't know how long that's going to last, frankly, because you lose a lot of traffic, as I've shown in the previous charts, when that happens. All right, so for community, Littlefield Utopia Sky, again, high scores, followed by Wolf Territories. And for content, Littlefield and Wolf Territories had the high scores, followed by Utopia Sky. And then I ran all the comments that everybody had about their grids that were anonymously submitted in the survey. And yeah, everybody loves their grid, and everybody really loves Kitely and Littlefield and Utopia Sky, and left comments about it. All right, so that's on the OpenSim side. If you want to help me cover this space, please email me. Please get in touch, send press releases, send announcements, send opinion pieces, essays, travelogues, reviews of concerts and events, all that good stuff. And I'm going to try to run as much of it as I can. All right, let's go on to the metaverse. So the metaverse saw a little bit of shaking up this year, and pretty much the air has gone out of like every technology other than AI. So headset shipments are actually up according to IDC, but they include AR and VR shipments here, which includes smart glasses, which is basically an AI kind of thing. So it's doubtful how much this reflects continued interest in virtual reality, as opposed to VR and AR combined. Meanwhile, Google interest trends for virtual reality are like, nothing. So very sad to see. Meta has lost more than $70 billion on its metaverse projects over the last 4 years. and they've been making big cuts in their teams, and they're cutting their budget again by 30%, which is, a little ironic considering they changed their name from Facebook to Meta to celebrate going all in on the metaverse. And I tried their platform and I'm not impressed. I kind of think they were trying to do like an AOL thing if you're old and remember the early days of the internet, like I do. And I'm not a fan of the closed world model for virtual reality, which is what they were trying to do. And they were trying to sell it to business users. But if I'm a business user, I do not want Facebook hearing all my business conversations,
They're 2
seeing all
separate
my business.
universes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, no, no, I don't want that. There's enough privacy issues with Facebook as it is. I don't want to be using it for anything internal. I want to have a closed proprietary world that I run in my own servers where I can control access, I can control content, I can control all this stuff. And so, yeah, like so, I cover the enterprise side and the Facebook's Horizons and their virtual reality worlds platform is just a complete non-starter
Yeah,
for all of them.
their horizons, I think one of the big issues there was, which we see in a lot of the VR worlds, is these kids come in because they're more than likely given the technology to babysit them so they can go in and do things anywhere they want to. So you got all these kids that just swarm the place and they suck all the fun out of it because you go to a concert to try to watch something, you got these little kids all around you trying to bother you and do weird stuff, and it just kind of kills the platform. Also on the glasses, I had for a couple years I had the Meta glasses, and then they were kind of cool, but it was more talking to AI than anything else. And now just this
Yeah,
month, I believe they're releasing the ones that are actually have something inside the screen that you can do, but it's only on one side. It's on one eye. So how well
yeah,
that works, I don't know. Plus, I think they're in the style of what we affectionately termed in the military as BC glasses or birth control style because they have that Clark Kent kind of style look to them. So it'll
yeah,
be a while. I think that Meta just they went too far into it too fast because Zuckerberg thought it was going to take off real fast, and it's like we see with so many things with the Gartner's hype cycle. It doesn't happen as fast as you think. People react to things differently, and there's a lot of things in the market that affect that.
yeah. And the technology, the user experience is not there and it won't be there for a while. So, I mean, I love the idea of using OpenSim and virtual reality for work. And I have tried to do that. I mean, early on, I was able to import my entire Google Workplace into a virtual office on my little bit OpenSim grid. But I'm sitting there as an avatar looking at a picture of my Google Workplace instead of just opening it in a browser, the next window over, which adds delays and it's hard to see it. You have to zoom in and out. It's not really the best interface for accessing any kind of work you want to do. And if you're in virtual reality, it's even more difficult. It's hard to see your keyboard, or often
Exactly.
impossible to see your keyboard. And it's hard to read small text.
Yeah.
And why do that when you could just open it in the browser and just do everything and just use Zoom for your meetings? I mean,
Yeah.
so much easier, so much more convenient. The headsets have to boot up. They invariably are out of charge, and you have to,
Nobody wants to live in
try
a headset all day either, you know?
because you're limited to how many hours you can wear it. So you're going to take it off. The battery's going to run out. It's going to need an update. And the next time you need to hop into a meeting, you have to spend half an hour installing updates and you have to charge up the battery. And by that time, the meeting's over. So you might as well just go on Zoom. So
Yeah.
everybody's going on Zoom.
I think it's
And
much like robotics is that it has to have something that adds value for us to see its worth. So if it's
and
just
it
to do it in a different way and it's not as easy, well, then that's not really going to sell. It's got to bring additional functionality or additional values for us.
right, right. And so everybody's on their desktop anyway when they're working. And when you're already on your desktop, it is really convenient to open a Zoom window, to open uh, your Microsoft Word, your calendar, your email, and have everything right there. I mean, that is a very well optimized workflow right now. Trying to do this in virtual reality means you're going back 10 steps and having a much worse experience and headaches, and you're sweating in this headset, and there's no actual advantages to doing it. I've got a high-end headset from HP that I ordered a couple of years ago. I haven't even unpacked it from the box because there's literally been no reason to use this. Now, I do think that eventually we will have AR in our glasses as an evolution of our smartphones. And we're not close to that yet. We need some societal changes about how we feel about people wearing these glasses, because right now people don't like it. There was I think, a story on the subway yesterday. Some woman saw a guy wearing the Meta glasses, took them off his face and broke them. And everyone on the train was totally cool with it, which, I can see that. Uh, so we need to have some social shifts. We need to have a mass adoption, moving from us looking at our phone screens to us looking at our glasses. Some people don't like wearing glasses. I have no problem with I've been wearing glasses my whole life. My avatar's wearing glasses now because, she needs it. She's got bad eyesight. A lot of people don't wear glasses and don't want to. So
Yeah.
they might, and a lot of people don't like contact lenses. I'm never going to stick something in my eye. Why would I? That sounds gross. So there's going to be adoption hurdles to those glasses. But at least when you're wearing glasses, you can literally wear them all day. That's what they're made for. And I can see the AR potential of glasses. So instead of having a Zoom window popping up on my computer, I will see a 3D image of my friend physically sitting on a chair next to me or across the table from
Yeah.
me. And it's almost like we're in the same room.
So it's
So I
like it
can kind
extends
of,
your world for you. Yeah.
yeah, and I can see the potential of, instead of having a physical monitor, I have a virtual monitor floating ahead of me, in front of me, as big as I want it to be, all that stuff. Once the technology improves, the graphics gets a lot better. So all of this is several years away, which is a good thing because that gives the open source community time to get in gear and build something. And that could be something that comes out of OpenSim, that could be something that comes out of something else, but it's a window of opportunity that we really need to be stepping up into, so that we don't have capture of the metaverse by big commercial players. Because when you're in a commercial platform, that's a virtual reality platform, the owner of that platform sees literally everything you do, every single thing. If you think it's bad online, it's like 10 times worse in virtual reality. Because not only they're hearing everything you say, they're seeing everything you type, they're seeing where you're looking, they're seeing your gestures, they're seeing your emotional reactions to things. And they're using AI to process all of this to get like really, really deep knowledge into how your brain works. Do we want that?
Where's
Or
all
would we
that data
rather,
going? Yeah.
yeah. So, so I really want to see an open source metaverse. And I see a window of opportunity being there for somebody to do that. And with AI, it might help with the development to get it done a little bit faster. I talk to a lot of CIOs and CTOs, that's chief intelligence officers and chief technology officers at big corporations. And they're saying that one of the first use cases of AI in all their companies is software development, because the agentic AI for software development is ahead of all the other use cases, because developers are into this stuff. And so they write the stuff for themselves, and then they're all trying out the stuff that they're building. And so they care about getting it to actually work because developers are writing it and developers are using it. So there's a very close connection between the developer and the user of the technology, which is always a good thing for developing stuff. And so that really, really works. And the companies that are using it are seeing a lot of acceleration of development. Huge problems with it still because the context windows are still not big enough to do all the security checks and all the style checks and all the configuration checks and architecture checks to make sure the new code fits in with the old code and everything else and that it's done to your standards. But everybody's working on that. Everybody is investing so much in fixing that problem because they see the market potential of that. So if you're a developer and you want to build an open source metaverse, I think in 2026, you will have the tools to be able to do that on a scale that's never been seen before in history. And I've talked to CEOs who've been able to move off of proprietary software that they were paying tens of thousands a year for or more into software that their own developers built with the help of AI that was better, faster, they can update it easier, they didn't have to wait around for the vendor to make changes. Now, it's not an instant thing to try out. So there's a lot of people who tried this out and say, "Oh, I tried it, it didn't work." It didn't work for you because you don't know how to do it. So the people who are investing serious time and effort into learning how to use AI, learning how to use the agentic systems, building the context that these systems require to work, knowing their limitations, know where they can speed up the work and where they can't, having good checks and balances built in. So they will often use static and dynamic software analysis in combination with the prompting to analyze the code that comes out. And they have like multiple layers of checks already because they have enterprise grade software development platforms. They are finding that there are use cases for AI software coding assistance that can speed up development work by like a factor of 2 times or 3 times, or some companies I've talked to have said they can speed it up like 10 times. And so Andrew in the comments says that AI doesn't know when it doesn't know something. And that is true. And one of the things that people are telling me is that when an expert is using AI to do something that they know how to do, they can tell that the AI did it right or did it wrong. And if the AI did it wrong, they'll say, no, redo it. That's the wrong way to do it because they're an expert in that area.
Yeah.
And if they're not an expert, they will miss that. And you'll end up with code that has weird structural mistakes. Like maybe it works, but it's just like it does everything the wrong way. It only looks like it's working, but it's really not. And somebody who is not an expert might not be able to catch it. So the way some people are using AI coding assistants is like a very, very new intern who doesn't know what they're doing, who has to be talked through things the first few times, but then eventually they get the hang of it and you can start trusting them to do more and more. So that's happening. And also the AIs in general are getting better. So they're winning coding competitions, they're winning math competitions. So even the generic AIs that aren't custom trained by a company on its own standards and its own code base, which is what companies are doing, even the generic ones are getting to be pretty good at coding. And I wrote a story for Computer World a couple of months ago when I used Vibe coding to generate a consumer-facing app using several different platforms. And the one that I eventually wound up featuring as my choice set up everything. It set up the social media connections that I could not have been able to do because I didn't know how to do it. It set up user authentication and account creation, back-end databases using some database that I'd never heard of. It did, and wrote it in Python, a language that I didn't know. And then I ran all the tests on it, and the stuff worked. It was a small app. It was like a low-risk app, but it all worked, and the UI looked beautiful. And it did things that it was supposed to do that I wasn't asking for because I didn't know that I needed it. So I was very, very impressed. And it is improving faster than any technology we've seen before in history.
Definitely. Yeah,
So
it's in its, infant years, and that's one thing I think people need to be mindful of. This is like a little child, and it's, like, doing incredible things at this point. I think a lot of times we're kinda quick to either say, "Is this something good or something bad?" We wanna classify it one way or another, and I really truly believe that you need to keep an eye on it because this is gonna be the future. It's not going away tomorrow. So it might not do everything the way you want when using this AI over here, but maybe it's a matter of picking the right AI or learning the techniques. I'm currently, I went back to school about 2 months ago to Purdue University, and I'm studying Python to write my own generative AI apps and large language models. And one of the things that we just took a class on this past week, they went to a website and basically just by using a picture and a URL, it was able to basically understand the way that everything was coded and tell you how you can make a website very similar. And it gave you all the code. But here's the caveat, you still needed to understand coding because when you get the pieces to assemble, you need to know how to put things together correctly. So it still takes a lot of human interaction with it, but it's a tool, it's a paintbrush, and it's like any other. It's got some things it's good at and some things it's not so good at, but it's also evolving.
the one thing that the company execs are telling me that when they use this is that you still need a lot of human interventions for the integrations, security policies, compliance, all those other things that go into creating software systems because the AI cannot do it yet. And yeah, moving really quickly. There's a agentic system called Manus, came out of China about a year ago, that basically builds code for you, and commercial platform. And some joker went in there and said, Manus, reverse engineer yourself. Write me an open source version of yourself. And it did. They uploaded it to GitHub that day, and they called it Anus. And it's up there now. It's been forked several hundred times.
Oh my God.
Um, yeah, yeah, but it's a very powerful agentic AI code development platform. And so, yeah, somebody actually used it to clone itself in an open source version. Yeah. Yeah, cool stuff is happening. If you are a metaverse developer and you want to see a virtual reality metaverse that is open and open source, we will soon have tools to do that at a scale we've never seen before. So if you are a developer and you don't know how AI works, this is a good time to start experimenting with it because I'm already talking to people, not vendors, not VCs, but actual people using the stuff in companies where their jobs are on the line and they're spending real money on it, who are seeing dramatic benefits from it already. And next year, as the agentic AI systems start maturing and scaling up, and if you remember how fast images improved, how fast video improved, coding is going through that same kind of fast evolution. Context windows are growing huge. Context windows are really important for code because the context window is how much an AI can hold memory. If it can only hold a small amount in its memory at a time, it can't really do much for your code. It can only do like little snippets for you. But if it has like millions of tokens in its context window, then it can see large portions of your code base. It can see examples of your code. It can see your standards and your policies and all your documentation for the other code bases and all the other stuff that it needs to write code that actually works. And having a big context window that is actually usable by the AI, because some context windows are so big that the AI can't even access it. Having a big and usable context window is, yeah. If you don't want your training data to be going into training OpenAI as model or Anthropic's Claude model, there is now a new open source AI, Mistral. Mistral 3 just came out last week. Previously, your choice was either the big commercial models or Meta's Llama, which was kind of like half and half, or the Chinese open source models. And the European models weren't that good. The latest version of Mistral 3 is up there with the big frontier models. They are open source, Apache 2 licensed. You can run it locally on your own servers. They come in multiple sizes. I highly recommend you check it out if you want to have an AI that it's just for you and not profiting off of you. They have coding assistance. They have an agentic platform. They have all the things, and highly, highly recommend. This is brand new. They also have a chatbot called the Chat, which also has a free plan. And yeah, highly recommend. They're in Europe. They comply with all the privacy laws and all the regulations there, which are further ahead than ours. And again, you can download it and just run it locally so nobody else sees what you're doing, whatever creepy things you might be doing with it. Yeah, highly recommend. If you're into that kind of thing, of course. Yeah. All right. So that was it for me. Here's my my email address. I've also started posting stuff on YouTube because my job is going to go away because of AI. I talk to media companies; they're all investing heavily in this, and I lived through the dot-com boom. I know what's going to happen. And so the solution for all content creators is either to go all in on AI and basically become developers, or to go all in on being human and really lean into the personal connection, the relationships, the trust, the emotional value of what they do. And for that, being on YouTube is one way to do it. So I'm going to try doing that. And I'm going to try to be in as many physical conferences as possible. I'm going to be at the CES next month. That's the Consumer Electronics Show. I was at the NVIDIA conference a couple of months ago. So I'm going to be trying to get out physically and getting my face in front of people as much as possible too, because that's what you got to do.
Very
Yep.
cool. Hey, thank you,
And
Maria, for the information. That was a really interesting presentation you gave.
yeah,
As a
so
reminder to our audience, you will want to check out the conference.opensimulator.org site to see what is coming up on the conference schedule. You won't want to miss our next session, which will begin at 10 a.m. in this keynote region, and it's entitled Whispers in the Code, a creative encounter with AI. Also, we encourage you to visit the OSCC 25 Poster Expo, which is located in the OSCC Expo 3 region, to find accompanying information on presentations and to explore the Hypergrid resources, which you can find in OSCC Expo 2 region, along with the sponsor and crowdfunder booths, which are located throughout all of the OSCC Expo regions. Thank you again, Maria, our speaker, and to the audience.